Now, a story about the world-famous show Doctor Who, and I promise you won't need to hide behind the sofa. Did you know that the iconic theme tune that accompanied the series was created by a composer from Coventry? Delia Derbyshire's work had a profound effect on the world of electronic music, and Radio 2 presenter Stuart Maconie is a bit of a fan.
It was the theme tune that changed the world, and the very first time the public had ever heard electronic music. It had a huge influence on pioneers like Pink Floyd, and even today inspires modern dance acts. So who was the person behind it, and why was she so important? Everyone knows the Doctor Who theme. Most of us have grown up with it. But the techniques one woman developed to make it have changed the shape and sound of modern music forever. But the woman herself remains a mystery. Her name was Delia Derbyshire. She came from Coventry. She made the theme tune that made kids hide behind the sofa, and I still play her music on my shows. The theme from Doctor Who, composed by Delia Derbyshire and Ron Grainer. On the show today is the boss of a cutting-edge record label. How influential do you think Delia Derbyshire's been on the way of kind of modern music sounds?
Massively influential, especially the electronic stuff. She's been massively influential.
Despite her massive influence, Delia turned her back on music and disappeared. But now I want to know more. How did she revolutionise pop music? Who was she? And why did she throw it all away? Our journey begins here, in war-torn Coventry. Because this is where Delia grew up. She lived through the Coventry Blitz, surrounded by death, destruction, and surreal sounds. The young Delia would lie awake at night listening to the alien and terrifying sounds of the war going on all around her. The falling bombs, the explosions, the sirens. And later, these would form the inspiration for her music. And that music includes the Doctor Who theme tune, as Delia explains in this interview broadcast now for the very first time.
See, the sounds of the air raid sirens, it's an abstract sound, and it's meaningful. You know, there's the sound of the all clear. Well, that's sort of electronic music in those days.
So the sounds of war led to a world-renowned theme tune. But back in the 60s, in order to compose that, she had to leave Coventry and seek her fortune in London. Like a lot of free spirits at the time, Delia came to the BBC. She came to work in this unusual building for an obscure department called the Radiophonic Workshop, where the weird and the artistic met. Even among the radical pioneers of the BBC, Delia was considered a rebel.
I was told in no uncertain terms that the BBC does not employ composers. And so it was only by gradually sort of infiltrating the system that I managed to do the music. I think you'd call that music, wouldn't you?
And what Delia and the Radiophonic Workshop did in this building was to revolutionise music. Delia set to work using primitive and unusual recording equipment, but that strange gear can make strange sounds.
Well, the first stage in the realisation of a piece of music is to construct the individual sounds that we're going to use. We can build up any sound we can possibly imagine almost. We spend quite a lot of time trying to invent new sounds, sounds that don't exist already, sounds that can't be produced by musical instruments.
It was a groundbreaking department, long since gone, but some of the equipment and the people are still around, including this man. You may not know him, but virtually every person in the UK knows one of the sounds he invented, the sound of the TARDIS. And he worked alongside Delia.
She was a sound lady. She loved sound. She loved a thunderstorm. I remember having a whole day, and she didn't speak to me until this thunderstorm at night. And she turned to me and said, "Oh, this sound of thunder, absolutely wonderful."
Don't be modest. The Radiophonic Workshop and the
the Doctor Who theme. It must still be not only the first piece of electronic music most people heard, but probably one of the most widely heard pieces of electronic music in the world.
Yes, I would say that, because there's so many countries it's been sold, so many different versions have been done, most of which Delia would have detested. But,
yes.
In fact, she was very scathing about some of the later ones. She felt the purity of the first one had a great deal. And a lot of people still think it's the most special of all.
Oh, it is. The first one's the best, yeah.
That original Doctor Who theme was just a small part of Delia's massive output. She composed music for an astonishing number of landmark programmes of the day, but kept alive by this archivist.
Most of the programmes that I did were either in the far distant future, the far distant past, or in the mind.
Doctor Who's clearly the most famous thing, Mark, that Delia worked on, but what else was her output for the BBC? Presumably she worked on a lot of stuff.
Educational programmes, Radio 3 dramas, lots of documentaries. They were the staple diet of radiophonic workshop output, really.
Yeah. So she would come in and be given a sort of worksheet of, this is what we're working on this week, it's a wildlife documentary, or it's a...
Yeah, this is it. This is what you do in your own time.
How did she find that?
Tricky. Deadlines. She was not a person for deadlines, didn't like deadlines. She liked being creative. Deadlines weren't creative. Yeah. So very frustrated with that.
But despite her talent and her wonderful music, she didn't get a penny in royalties. In fact, she didn't even appear on the Doctor Who credits.
Bitter at the way she'd been treated, Delia left music behind. Sadly, she became increasingly reclusive and an alcoholic. Delia fell into ill health, made worse by her drinking. She was diagnosed with breast cancer and later died of kidney failure, unrecognised and almost unknown. But the story doesn't end there. And to tell the final part, I've come to Manchester. Because after her death, an amazing discovery was made. Hundreds and hundreds of tapes of music taken from her studio, stuffed into cereal boxes and left in her attic. But now, nearly 40 years later, they're being lovingly restored here at the University of Manchester. What state were the tapes in when you found them?
Better state than we thought they would be, but they needed to be urgently transferred into digital format so that you could play them repeatedly, so that other people could come and listen to them.
Mm. And what's it like?
It's wonderful. We can maybe listen to some of that.
Absolutely. That's amazing, because it doesn't sound anything like any of her other stuff, and that sounds like modern electronic dance music.
Yes, yeah, it does.
It's a revelation, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the aim of what you're doing here?
Well, the first aim is obviously to preserve the archive, but the long-term aim is it's getting the word out there as well, which has been very slow to happen so far because we're still doing all the cataloguing and so on, but we're just itching to open the archive up and let people come and hear it.
Like at Glastonbury this summer, when 100,000 people danced the night away to the sound of Doctor Who.